3 pages of paper, handwritten, found on a staircase, 370 words that would become the most analyzed document in criminal history. December 26, 1996. 5:45 a.m. Patsy Ramsey descends the spiral staircase in her Boulder, Colorado mansion. On the steps, she finds a ransom note. It demands $118,000 for the safe return of her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét. But this wasn't a ransom note written by kidnappers. This was something else entirely, because 8 hours later, JonBenét's body would be found in the basement of her own home. She had never been kidnapped. She had never left the house. And the ransom note, this elaborate theatrical 2.5-page document, was the key to understanding what really happened. The note was written on paper from inside the Ramsey home, using a pen from inside the Ramsey home, with practice drafts found in the notepad from inside the Ramsey home. It referenced John Ramsey's exact bonus amount, information only someone with intimate knowledge would know. Most ransom notes are brief, 5 sentences, maybe 10. We have your daughter. Pay $500,000. Wait for instructions. Don't call police. This note was different. It rambled. It included movie references. It sounded like someone creating a narrative rather than documenting a real kidnapping. And 29 years later, this note remains the most damning evidence in one of America's most famous unsolved murders. Because whoever wrote this note knew JonBenét was already dead or dying in the basement when they placed it on those stairs. Tonight, we examine the ransom note that exposed the truth about what happened to JonBenét Ramsey. Every word, every phrase, every contradiction, every clue hidden in 370 words that were meant to mislead investigators, but instead became the roadmap to understanding this tragedy. This is the story of how a ransom note became a confession. Before we analyze the ransom note that has puzzled investigators for 3 decades, make sure to subscribe to the Investigation Room and hit that notification bell. Here at the Investigation Room, we examine the evidence that others overlook. We analyze the details that reveal truth. We don't accept official narratives without scrutiny. We believe that understanding the evidence is the key to understanding the crime. New in-depth documentaries every week, focusing on cases where a single piece of evidence changes everything. If you followed the JonBenét Ramsey case and wondered about that bizarre ransom note, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What detail from the ransom note do you find most suspicious? Now, let's examine the ransom note that was meant to deceive but instead expose the truth. Boulder, Colorado, Christmas, 1996. To understand why the ransom note is so significant, you need to understand the family it was written about. JonBenét Ramsey was 53 years old, a successful businessman who had built Access Graphics into a billion-dollar subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. He was president and CEO. He was wealthy, respected, living in a 7,000-square-foot Tudor mansion worth over $700,000. Patricia "Patsy" Ramsey, 40 years old, was a former Miss West Virginia. She had graduated from West Virginia University with a journalism degree. She was elegant, devoted to her children, deeply involved in church and community activities. Their daughter, JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, was 6 years old. Born August 6, 1990, she was named by combining her father's first and middle names with her mother's name. She was blonde, bright, energetic. She competed in child beauty pageants, winning title after title across Colorado. Burke Ramsey, 9 years old, was JonBenét's older brother. He was quieter, interested in computers and model trains. He had an elaborate train set in the basement that he spent hours working on. By all external appearances, the Ramseys were living an ideal life: wealth, success, 2 beautiful children, a magnificent home in one of America's most desirable cities. Christmas Day, 1996, was spent like many American families spend the holiday. The Ramseys opened presents in the morning. JonBenét received a bicycle. Burke got the gifts he wanted. The house was decorated beautifully. That evening, the family attended a Christmas party at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, close friends who lived nearby. The gathering was festive. Adults talked. Children played. JonBenét wore a red turtleneck and black velvet pants. The Ramseys left the party around 9 or 9:30 p.m. The drive home was short, just a few minutes. According to John and Patsy, both children fell asleep in the car during this brief drive. John carried JonBenét inside and up to her second-floor bedroom. Patsy said she either put JonBenét to bed in her clothes or changed her into pajamas without fully waking her. Burke went to his room. John and Patsy went to their third-floor master bedroom. They had to wake up early, around 5:30 a.m., for a planned flight to Michigan to spend a second Christmas with John's adult children from his first marriage. According to the family's account, everyone was asleep by 10:10 p.m. The house was quiet, secure, safe, or so they believed. Because sometime between 10:00 p.m. on December 25th and 5:45 a.m. on December 26th, something happened in that house. Something that would end JonBenét's life. Something that would prompt someone to sit down with a notepad and pen and compose one of the most bizarre documents in criminal history. December 26, 1996, approximately 5:30 a.m. Patsy Ramsey woke up in the third-floor master bedroom. She got dressed, applied her makeup as part of her morning routine. Interestingly, she wore the same outfit she had worn the previous evening to the Christmas party, the red turtleneck and black pants. Around 5:45 a.m., she left the bedroom and began descending the spiral staircase that connected the floors of the house. As she approached the lower steps, near the first floor, she saw several sheets of white paper laid out on the wooden stairs. Not crumpled, not hidden, carefully arranged where they couldn't be missed. Patsy picked up the pages and began reading. It was a ransom note. The note began, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business but not the country that it serves." Patsy's hands began shaking. She continued reading. "At this time we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter." The note continued with specific demands. It wanted exactly $118,000 in cash. It specified denominations, $100,000 in $100 bills and $18,000 in $20 bills. The money was to be placed in a brown paper bag. The note warned against contacting police, FBI, or any other authority. It threatened that JonBenét would be beheaded if they didn't follow instructions precisely. It said the kidnappers would call between 8 and 10 a.m. with further instructions for delivering the ransom. The note ended with, "Victory SBTC." Patsy screamed. The sound brought John running downstairs. Together they ran to JonBenét's bedroom. Her bed was empty. They checked Burke's room. He appeared to be asleep. Despite the ransom note's explicit warning not to contact authorities, Patsy called 911 at 5:52 a.m. The 911 call recording captured Patsy's panicked voice. "We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please." The dispatcher asked questions. Patsy provided information. JonBenét was 6 years old, blonde, missing. There was a ransom note. Boulder police were dispatched immediately. Officer Rick French arrived at 5:59 a.m., just 7 minutes after the call. He entered the house expecting a kidnapping situation. He read the ransom note. He began a search of the house, checking for signs of forced entry, looking for the missing child. He searched the main floors. He searched the upper floors. He went to the basement. The basement was complex, with multiple rooms. Officer French checked several areas. He approached a small room called the wine cellar, secured with a wooden latch on the outside. He tried the door but didn't open it. He assumed no one could be inside a room latched from the outside. He moved on without entering. This decision would later be identified as catastrophic because JonBenét was behind that door. As the morning progressed, the Ramsey home filled with people. John called friends. Patsy called friends. Within an hour, Fleet and Priscilla White arrived, along with John and Barbara Fernie, and Reverend Roll Hoverstock from the Ramsey's church. These well-meaning friends moved through the house, attempting to comfort the distraught parents. They prepared food in the kitchen. They sat in various rooms. Each person who entered was potentially contaminating what should have been a secured crime scene. Detective Linda Arndt arrived around 8 a.m. She was assigned to manage the scene and wait with the family for the promised ransom call. But Detective Arndt was alone. Her requests for backup, for additional detectives, for crime scene technicians, were not fulfilled in a timely manner. The promised ransom call never came. 8:00 a.m. passed, 9:00 a.m. passed, 10:00 a.m. passed. No call. The silence was ominous. If this was truly a kidnapping for ransom, why hadn't the kidnappers called? At 1 p.m., nearly 7 hours after the ransom call window had closed, Detective Arndt made a decision. She asked John Ramsey and Fleet White to search the house again, looking for anything unusual. John and Fleet began searching. They worked their way through the house, checking rooms. Then they went to the basement. John walked directly to the wine cellar. He opened the white wooden door. Inside, on a white blanket on the concrete floor, was JonBenét. John screamed. He pulled the duct tape off her mouth. He picked up her body and carried her upstairs, destroying critical crime scene evidence in his panic and grief. JonBenét was dead. She had been dead for hours. Her skin showed lividity. Her body was in full rigor mortis. There was a white cord around her neck, fashioned into a garrote with a wooden stick. Her hands were loosely bound above her head. She was wearing a white shirt and white long johns. The kidnapping was a lie. JonBenét had never left the house. She had been dead in the basement the entire time. And the ransom note, that elaborate 2.5-page document, was not what it claimed to be. The ransom note found on the Ramsey staircase would become the most analyzed document in criminal history. Handwriting experts, linguistic analysts, forensic document examiners, FBI behavioral profilers, all have studied this note, and what they've found is extraordinary. Let's start with the physical facts. The note was written on white-lined paper from a legal pad found inside the Ramsey home. The pad was kept near the kitchen telephone, used by Patsy for grocery lists and household notes. The pen used was a black Sharpie felt-tip marker, also from inside the house. After the note was written, the pen was placed back in its holder in the kitchen. Think about that for a moment. Whoever wrote this note used materials from the house, wrote nearly 400 words, and then carefully put the pen back where it belonged. What kidnapper does that? But it gets more remarkable. Crime scene investigators found something else in that notepad: practice drafts. On a previous page, someone had started writing Mr. and Mrs. R before stopping. They had torn out that page, started over, and written Mr. Ramsey instead. This means someone sat in the Ramsey house, comfortable and unhurried, writing practice versions of a ransom note, starting over when they didn't like their opening, taking their time to get it right. No intruder would do this. An intruder would be desperate to write quickly and leave. They wouldn't have time for rough drafts. Now let's examine the content. The note is 370 words across 2.5 pages. Most ransom notes in real kidnapping cases are brief, maybe 5 sentences. We have your daughter. Pay $100,000. Don't call police. Wait for instructions. Short, direct, functional. This note is different. It's theatrical. It includes unnecessary details. It sounds like dialogue from a crime movie. Here's the opening. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. A small foreign faction. What does that even mean? Which country? What faction? What are their grievances? The note never explains. It's vague, almost deliberately vague, as if someone is creating the appearance of a motive without having an actual motive. Then comes the demand. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. Notice the misspelling, possession instead of possession. The note also misspells business as bussiness. Are these genuine mistakes by someone with poor spelling? Or are they intentional, designed to make the writer appear less educated than they actually are? Linguistic analysts noted that the rest of the note uses sophisticated vocabulary and sentence structure. Words like hence and attaché, phrases like adequately sized. This suggests an educated writer. So why the misspellings? Possibly to disguise the writer's true education level. Now the ransom amount, $118,000. Not $100,000, not $200,000, but $118,000. This specific figure was almost exactly John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus from Access Graphics, $118,170.50. How would a random kidnapper know this number? John's bonus was not public information. It wasn't in newspapers. It was specific financial information that would primarily be known to the Ramsey family and perhaps to people within Access Graphics who handled compensation. The fact that the note demanded this exact amount is one of the most damning details. It points to someone with intimate knowledge of the family's finances. The note specifies denominations: $100,000 in 100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Why be so specific? Real kidnappers typically don't care about denominations. They just want the money. The note continues with threats. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. These threats are dramatic but strange. Talking to a stray dog is an unusual phrase. It sounds like something from a movie, and indeed, linguistic analysts found multiple movie references in the note. "Don't try to grow a brain" is nearly identical to a line from the 1994 film Speed. The overall tone echoes Dirty Harry and other crime thrillers. The phrase about being well rested when delivering the ransom seems oddly considerate for kidnappers making death threats. Here's another crucial element. The note refers to the writer both as "we," a group, and "I," an individual. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. But later, "I advise you to be rested." This inconsistency suggests one person writing while trying to create the impression of multiple kidnappers. The note ends with "Victory SBTC." Those initials have never been definitively explained. Investigators have proposed dozens of theories. Saved by the Cross. Patsy was devoutly Christian. Subic Bay Training Center. John had been stationed there in the Navy decades earlier, but no explanation has been confirmed. Now let's talk about handwriting analysis. Multiple experts examined the note and compared it to writing samples from John Ramsay, Patsy Ramsey, and others. John Ramsay was excluded by most experts. His handwriting showed significant differences from the ransom note. Patsy Ramsey could not be excluded. Several experts noted similarities between Patsy's natural handwriting and the ransom note, the way certain letters were formed, the overall style and spacing. But no expert would definitively say Patsy wrote the note. The evidence was suggestive but not conclusive. Some characteristics seemed deliberately disguised, as if the writer were trying to change their natural style. Independent experts hired by the Ramsey defense team concluded Patsy did not write the note. Experts hired by Boulder police couldn't rule her out. The handwriting evidence, like so much in this case, was ambiguous. But here's what's not ambiguous: the timeline. If this was a real kidnapping, when was the note written? Before the kidnappers entered the house? Then how did they get the notepad and pen from inside the Ramsey home? After entering, while waiting for the family to fall asleep. That means they spent 20-30 minutes sitting in the house writing practice drafts, while everyone slept upstairs. Extremely risky. Why take that chance? After JonBenét was already dead? Then what's the point of a ransom note for a child who's already deceased? None of these scenarios make sense for a real intruder kidnapping. But they make perfect sense if someone inside the house wrote the note. Someone who had all night. Someone who could write practice drafts without fear of being discovered. Someone who placed the note on the stairs knowing exactly when Patsy would come down and find it. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit reviewed the note. Their assessment was damning. This was very likely a staged ransom note written by someone inside the house. Real kidnappers don't behave this way. They don't break in, spend half an hour writing a lengthy note with movie references and practice drafts, kill their victim, leave the body in the house, and place the note on the stairs. It makes no logical sense. But staging a kidnapping after something terrible has already happened? That makes sense. The ransom note was meant to mislead investigators, to point them away from what actually happened, to create a false narrative of an intruder kidnapping. But instead, it exposed the truth. Because every element of that note pointed back to someone inside the house. Someone with knowledge. Someone with time. Someone who needed to create a story. On December 27, 1996, Dr. John Meyer, the Boulder County coroner, performed the autopsy on JonBenét Ramsey. The findings painted a horrific picture. The official cause of death: Asphyxiation, due to strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. JonBenét had sustained two catastrophic injuries. First, a massive blow to the head. The right side of her skull showed an 8.5-inch linear fracture. The force required to cause this injury was tremendous, equivalent to falling from a 2-story building or being struck with a heavy object swung with extreme force. This injury had caused severe hemorrhaging in her brain. It would have rendered her unconscious almost immediately. Second, strangulation by garrote. A white nylon cord had been tied around JonBenét's neck. Attached to the cord was a broken piece of one of Patsy's paintbrush handles, used to twist and tighten the cord progressively. The cord had cut deeply into her neck. There was petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes, small red spots caused by broken capillaries, a classic sign of strangulation. The critical question: which injury came first, and how much time passed between them? Based on the autopsy findings and expert analysis, most investigators believe the head injury came first. The brain swelling indicated JonBenét's heart was still beating for some time after the skull was fractured, pumping blood into the damaged area. The timeline suggested by experts JonBenét was struck on the head first, rendering her unconscious. Then, anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours later, the garrote was applied. This timing is crucial. It means whoever killed JonBenét had time to think, to make decisions, to act deliberately. This was not a single moment of violence. This was a sequence of events that unfolded over time. The autopsy revealed other findings. JonBenét's stomach contained partially digested pineapple. Based on digestion rates, Dr. Meyer estimated she had eaten this pineapple approximately 1 to 2 hours before her death. This detail became significant because a bowl of pineapple with a spoon was found on the kitchen table in the Ramsey home. The bowl had Burke's fingerprints on it and Patsy's fingerprints on the bowl itself. Both John and Patsy stated they did not feed JonBenét pineapple that night and didn't know when she ate it. This directly contradicted their statement that JonBenét went straight to bed asleep when they returned home from the Christmas party. If she ate pineapple 1 to 2 hours before death, and she died between midnight and 2 a.m., then she was awake and downstairs sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight. Someone was lying about the timeline. The autopsy also documented that JonBenét's hands were loosely bound above her head with white cord. The binding was so loose her hands could have easily slipped out. This raised questions. Why tie someone's hands in a way that wouldn't actually restrain them? Unless the binding was for appearance rather than function. Unless it was staging. Duct tape covered her mouth, a single piece of black duct tape that John had removed in his panic upon finding her. The autopsy found evidence of vaginal injury, which has been extensively debated. Some experts interpreted this as evidence of prior abuse. Others argued the findings could have innocent explanations. What's clear is that someone in that house knew what happened to JonBenét, and that someone wrote a ransom note to hide the truth. In 1997, forensic scientists analyzing evidence from JonBenét's clothing made a discovery that would change the direction of the investigation. They found DNA from an unknown male on JonBenét's underwear. This DNA did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. It didn't match any early suspects. When entered into CODIS, the FBI's criminal database, there was no match. In 2003, more sophisticated testing developed a more complete profile of this unknown male DNA. In 2008, using touch DNA technology, scientists tested JonBenét's long johns and found matching DNA on the waistband. The same unknown male's DNA was in 2 locations on the victim's clothing. Based on this evidence, Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey formally exonerated the Ramsey family in July 2008. She concluded that the DNA pointed to an intruder and that the family had been wrongly suspected. However, this exoneration was controversial. Many investigators and forensic experts argued that touch DNA could have been deposited innocently. The underwear JonBenét was wearing when found was brand new, several sizes too large, just removed from a package. Because it had never been washed, DNA from manufacturing, packaging, or retail handling could be present. Touch DNA transfers easily. A factory worker, a store employee, anyone who handled the clothing could have left trace DNA. The amount of DNA found was extremely small, With such minimal amounts, contamination becomes more likely. Critics argued that if the DNA was from the killer, there should be more of it. In a violent crime involving manual strangulation, you'd expect substantial DNA, especially under the victim's fingernails if there had been a struggle. Instead, there was only trace DNA, consistent with innocent transfer rather than violent contact. The Boulder Police Department didn't fully embrace the exoneration. They maintained that all theories remained under consideration. The DNA evidence hadn't solved the case. It had created another layer of debate. Does the DNA prove an intruder? Or is it innocent contamination that has nothing to do with the murder? This question remains unanswered. If you believe the ransom note was staged, written by someone inside the house to create a false narrative, then the question becomes, who wrote it? The primary theories focus on the Ramsey family members. Theory 1. Patsy wrote the note. In this theory, something happened to JonBenét, whether an accident or a moment of rage, and Patsy wrote the ransom note to stage a kidnapping and murder by an intruder. This theory is supported by handwriting analysis that couldn't exclude Patsy as the author, the note being written on Patsy's notepad with materials from the house, knowledge of John's bonus amount, which Patsy would know fibers from Patsy's jacket found on the duct tape and in the garrote cord. However, this theory requires believing a mother capable of extraordinary violence and deception. Theory 2. Both John and Patsy were involved. This theory suggests both parents discovered what happened to JonBenét and worked together to stage the scene and write the note. This is supported by the 1999 grand jury indictment, which charged both parents with child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. The indictment's language suggested the grand jury believed the parents helped someone avoid prosecution, possibly their son Burke. Theory 3. The note was written to protect Burke. This theory proposes that Burke, then 9 years old, was involved in JonBenét's death, either accidentally or impulsively, and that John and Patsy staged everything to protect their surviving child. This could explain the pineapple evidence, suggesting a late-night encounter between siblings in the kitchen. However, it requires believing parents would strangle their unconscious daughter and write an elaborate ransom note to cover up their son's actions. Burke has consistently denied any involvement and has successfully sued media outlets that suggested otherwise. Theory 4. An intruder wrote the note. This is the theory officially endorsed by the DA's office in 2008 based on DNA evidence. In this scenario, someone entered the house, possibly through an unlocked door or the basement window, wrote the ransom note planning a kidnapping. But something went wrong. The intruder killed JonBenét and fled. This theory is supported by the unknown male DNA. However, it faces significant challenges in explaining how an intruder could spend enough time to write a lengthy note with practice drafts without being detected. Each theory has evidence supporting it. Each has problems. And 29 years later, we still don't know definitively who wrote that note. In September 1998, a grand jury was convened to hear evidence in the JonBenét Ramsey case. For 13 months, 23 citizens heard testimony from dozens of witnesses. They reviewed thousands of pages of documents. They examined forensic evidence. In October 1999, they voted. District Attorney Alex Hunter announced that the grand jury had finished its work and that no charges would be filed. He stated the evidence was insufficient. For 14 years, the public believed the grand jury had found no reason to indict anyone. But in 2013, the truth was revealed. The grand jury had voted to indict both John and Patsy Ramsey. The charges: child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. The indictment stated the Ramseys did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenét Ramsey. It also stated they did render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such person. This language is crucial. The grand jury believed the Ramseys either caused JonBenét's death through neglect or helped someone else avoid prosecution. The implication: Burke was involved, and the parents covered it up. However, DA Hunter refused to sign the indictment. He believed the evidence was insufficient to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. This decision remains controversial. The grand jury, after hearing all the evidence for over a year, believed charges were warranted, but those charges were never pursued. 29 years after JonBenét's death, the case remains officially unsolved. But there is hope. Advances in forensic genealogy, the technique that identified the Golden State Killer in 2018, offer a potential path forward. The unknown male DNA profile from JonBenét's clothing could potentially be uploaded to genealogical databases. If matches are found with distant relatives, investigators could build family trees and identify suspects. John Ramsay, now in his 80s, has been a vocal advocate for this approach. He's given numerous interviews calling for advanced DNA testing. He believes this represents the best hope for finally identifying his daughter's killer. In 2021 and 2022, the Boulder Police Department announced they were working with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to review the case using the latest technology. In 2024, there were reports of renewed activity, additional DNA testing being conducted, new leads being pursued. The investigation continues. But the ransom note remains the key, because whoever wrote that note knew what happened to JonBenet. The note was meant to deceive, to create a false narrative, to point investigators away from the truth. Instead, it became the most damning evidence in the case. Every word, every phrase, every detail pointing back to someone inside that house. 3 pages of paper, 370 words, found on a staircase on December 26, 1996. A ransom note that was never meant to collect ransom. A kidnapping narrative for a child who was never kidnapped. A document written to hide the truth that instead exposed it. For 29 years, investigators, experts, and millions of people have analyzed this note, debated its meaning, questioned its origin. The conclusion that most experts reach: this note was written by someone inside the Ramsey home, someone with knowledge, someone with time, someone who needed to create a false narrative. Whether that person was Patsy Ramsey, as some investigators believe, or someone else, we still don't definitively know. But the note itself tells a story of staging, of deception, of a desperate attempt to mislead investigators. And perhaps, through modern DNA technology and continued investigation, the truth that this note was meant to hide will finally be revealed. JonBenét Ramsey was 6 years old when she died. She loved to sing and dance. She loved performing. She had dreams and a future that was stolen from her. She deserved better than what happened on Christmas night 1996. She deserved justice, and 29 years later, she still hasn't gotten it. The ransom note that was meant to deceive became the key to understanding this case. And perhaps, finally, it will lead investigators to the truth. If you want to see more investigations examining the evidence that reveals truth, subscribe to the Investigation Room. Hit that like button if this analysis of the ransom note raised questions you hadn't considered. And share your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think wrote the ransom note? What detail do you find most significant? JonBenét Ramsey deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. And the truth, hidden in 370 words, written on a December morning, deserves to be found.